Hello and welcome back to 18 Mile Hike. We will be continuing where we left off, which I guess is the next story. So this isn't a typical visual novel, as you may have noticed if you saw the first video or the first story or even read it yourself. So you do have the visual novel aspect where you have these characters talking and then they sort of bring up the story that they're each gonna tell because they're all taking turns telling a story. But when they're telling the story, there is no sprites. There is like the background, there is music, and then there is the words, but there isn't any of the typical visual novel things that you are used to if you are into visual novels. Because I do know that there are what used to be called sound novels where really wasn't any sprites. It was just text and you read it with music in the background. But yeah. Anyways, so the previous story was... I actually don't remember who told the story. I think it was the owl. And it was about 3 girls who go on one of those like cache-looking things where you go to a geocache, you take out the thing that's inside and then you replace it, I think. But one of the girls found what looked like Skittles or M&Ms, but they weren't quite right. And then they felt like they were being followed by somebody that broke into their hotel room. And then after they left, it turns out that they were actually being followed by someone, and they only barely managed to escape them. So yeah. So spoilers if you hadn't seen the previous one. But yeah. Hopefully you did. Anywho, so what else? Now, I believe the story is going to be told by... I believe his name is Nils, who's the fox that has the fish and woman made a pact against me. But yeah. So basically all these characters are going to be taking turns telling a story. I believe the hyena is going to be the last one. But yeah. Anywho, so yeah, without further ado, let us continue 18 Mile Hike. Oh. The Tale of the Butchered Tail. Sorry I made us late. I had to talk something out with the landlord. If you needed any help dealing with the vampires, you should have asked me. Nah, it's not like that. She's been running that boarding house since the 70s. It's falling apart and she can't really afford the renovations. You're not giving her free labor, are you? Not free, no. So heavily discounted. I'm doing it more for the building than her. You don't see wood paneling in interiors like that anymore. Places like that keep disappearing everywhere and get replaced with gentrification architecture. Plus, there is a rumor that Nicholas Sparks lived there once. Who? The Notebook guy. You've seen The Notebook? I thought everybody's seen The Notebook. I think Courtney showed it to me a long time ago, but she was way more into it than me. It's just one of those films everybody at least used to know about. I'm sure that she loved to hear about it. I'm good. Anyway, so worries on being late, Big Eye. No worries on being late, Big Eye. If you recall, I can't go back, so like if I make a mistake, then you're gonna hear the mistake. Alicia said that she'd be coming in late today, too. Something about one of her cousin's birthday parties. Who's telling the story tonight? Nails is up. Why, He gets a bit goofy is all. So how's your story coming, by the way? I'm working on it. Hey. I'm not saying that you should never be critical. But let's just see some work before you do. Well, damn. Okay. I wasn't expecting an execution tonight. Sorry about that. I'm just trying to apply the right amount of pressure to keep everybody motivated. Tactical strike. Nils, what the fuck? Ah. The sound of crackling explosives drowns out Thomas's screams. What the hell? A scout is prepared for anything, especially when they reach the rendezvous an hour and 27 minutes late. Look, we're sorry. The Max had some important stuff to talk with his landlord. More like Bax the Lax, if you ask me. My story is more important than niceties with the parasite class. She's got health problems, dumbass. I can't exactly plan when she's going to be lucid, and we had to talk about paid renovation work. Me and Alicia were late too, so we're more or less guilty. I wasn't late. The dog leans over and smiles, wiggling her paws at the boys. Hiya, Tom. Hiya, Max. Sup, bitches? What the hell is that thing on your waist? Huh? You mean the Labubu? Excuse you? I said Labubu. It is a popular stuffed animal going around right now. It sounds like a medical condition one of those old computer ads would warn you about. Do you have Labubu? It's more likely than you think. I think it's cute. How much do they cost? Oh, I didn't pay money for this. My cousin bought a couple of mystery boxes and got a duplicate. I told him that he could just sell it, but he doesn't know how to use eBay. What's a mystery box? They're these little capsules that you buy where you don't know what you're going to be getting. You're paying money, but you don't know what you're going to get. Usually they tell you what you can get. It's not a good idea to buy them if you just want one specific one. But if you're happy with most of the collection, your odds are good. So it's gambling. I guess to some extent. What happens when you get something that you don't want? Put it on eBay. Ah, right. People who don't want to guess can just look for the specific toy that they want. Usually it's a bit of a markup. Wait, I've definitely seen these before. Yeah, it's kind of hard not to. I think that they're really cute. Is this like the new big thing from a breakout designer? Actually, they were made by a guy in Hong Kong named Casing Lung since 2015. Huh. Now that you mention it, I've started seeing these everywhere too. What made them so popular all of a sudden? A K-pop star got a golden plated one. Ah. I thought they were one of those where the wild things are. I think that they call them elves. But Maurice Sendek's wild things were based on Nordic creature designs as well, so there's probably some common design influence there. I thought elves were supposed to be hairless and pretty. Tedious snobs, you mean? You could buy Arwen, Legolas, and Galadriel as a collector Barbies. I used to have Legolas. They're all so pretty. You know, that's the funny thing about our familiar monsters. We associate their names and identities with movies that we go and see, or products that we buy and sell. They practically become as familiar to us as a brand name with a logo. What if we didn't actually know what these things look like? What if we were staring at something straight from the nightmares of our ancestors and we didn't even know that the name that they'd put to it was something else entirely? Maybe a word that we use for a toy, or a very common merchandising mascot. Nils, if this story is about big feet, I swear to fucking God. As a matter of fact, the story is about something that happened near where we live, to someone that I knew. Even though he's not the main character, he was part of the group that experienced it, though folks still disagree on the details to this day. Nils grabbed a paw full of powdered coffee creamer and held it over the flames. This name of the story is The Tale of the Butchered Tail. Beverly and her husband Russ were no strangers to old wounds. She herself had 3 estranged children from 2 prior failed marriages, and Russ was a recovering heroin addict. After years of depression, disassociation, and withdrawal symptoms, they both turned to alternative medicines. Fortunately for them, these alternative ways of thinking help them both heal. After your life falls apart for the 10th time in a row, you start to realize that there's something wrong with you, and not everyone else. Bev laughed into her microphone. You have to ground yourself in something to gain control of your own perspective. When you're young and think that you're invincible, you don't ever stop to consider that you need to make a change. Lots of us older folks still don't think too much about that, said Marcia, an older woman who visited the live stream regularly. Bev and Russ laughed together. Well, y'all are the generation who lived through Woodstock, said Russ. Y'all had a lot going on. Maybe you didn't experience what you were looking for and got put off by psychedelics altogether. All I know is that the doctors aren't helping. They keep on giving me pills for every problem. Then when a pill has a side effect, they give me a pill for the side effect. Sometimes you do need a pill to solve a problem. Part of what we try to do is give people the tools to solve issues in your life that pills or psychedelics can't solve. A sudden ding went off in the voice chat. Somebody new had arrived. Hi, I'm new. My name is Tommy Talks. Bev tilted her head and squinted her eyes. Your name is Tommy Talks? Well, yes, that's the name of my YouTube stream. My name is Tommy and I hold talks. Russ leaned into his microphone. Hey there, Tommy Talks. We want to welcome you. Hope that you're having a blessed day. You're that religious group that does a ayahuasca retreat, right? The voice over the stream was young and excitable. The couple exchanged a glance. Russ cleared his voice. Yeah, man. But the word retreat is kind of a loaded term, you know. This is meant to be a spiritual experience. We also don't really use social media handles here. You can just, use your real name. Are you the shaman? No, that would be my wife. He chuckled. I'm just the legal guy. Bev cleared her voice. I do handle the ceremonies, but do keep in mind that we are a religious group. You can come and go as you please, but we're an older group of people seeking self-help and self-determination. We're not just out here hosting parties. That's okay. I'm seeking a spiritual experience too. Bev cleared her throat. Okay, but before we just invite anybody to our retreats, you should know the risks. Oh, I'm prepared for the risks. Bev paused again. I mean the medical risks, like knowing if your family history has predispositions to schizophrenia or bipolar disorders, plus the general health risks that come with going camping in the woods. The man chuckled a wheezy little laugh over the microphone. Yeah, that's all cool. It's cool. Russ gave his wife a look. She thinned her lips. All right. We just want you to know that we aren't liable for any risks. And we want you to know that these risks before we just allow anybody to come to our retreats. I'm going to direct you to our website. If you want to attend our next retreat, you'll find further documentation about and risks and waivers that will require your e-signature. Yeah, that's all fine. I just want an out-of-body experience. Beverly paused again. Right. But we want to make sure individuals have tools to become grounded to their own state of mind before they approach our medicine. Psychedelics are not miracle cures. You're just one of many tools that we want. They are just one of many tools that we want to give access to in people's quests for self-advocacy. That's just beautiful. It's really fucking beautiful, man. Okay. Just know that I'm in. I'll be signing those waivers and packing my bags tonight. They all heard the voice disconnection sound without much warning. Nobody said much in the voice chat for a while. What a fruitcake, said Marcia. I think it's just somebody from the media, said Russ. Those guys can lack boundaries. If he arrives with a camera crew, we'll be turning them away, said Bev. Goodbye. Good night, everybody. Good night, echoed the voices in the group call. Bev and Russ disconnected from the chat. Bev took off her headphones and let her curls hang loose. I hope that man doesn't show up this weekend. Well, Russ scratched his head and hung up his headphones on the side of the desk. If he does show up and causes problems, we'll have people to look after him. The day of the ceremony, they started when the sun was low. Bev's parents owned a horse ranch with several hundred acres of roaming territory where they could host events for the church. Bev greeted church members with handshakes and hugs, while Russ checked waivers and showed church members to the ceremony site where they could set up their tents. Most of the church members were in the 40s or 50s, some as old as their 70s, dressed in boho-style clothing or shirts, and wraps that showed more skin than was conventional for their age, much of it inked in tattoos displaying things like sacred geometry, wild roses, and the eyes of Horus. The high elevation meant everybody had to be careful about sunburns and staying hydrated, so each guest would catch the scent of the sunscreen and bug spray ever so often, amidst the chorus of cicadas and the crackling of pots over campfires. The ceremony itself was held by a fire pit near a gazebo Bev's father had built the prior summer. Beverly simmered the ingredients on the drink over the lit fire, humming a psalm as the participants of the fire gathered. Their church borrowed heavily from Christian practices rather than traditional Southern American practices, which led to a more casual congregation with a multi-faith approach that incorporated spirituality over rigid, dogmatic procedure. Though there wasn't a simple phrase for their organization beyond mushy church, Bev knew what outsiders thought it was, just another way to pass time for aging hippies. Russ was the one who had registered their church as an official religious organization under federal protection, which was a common workaround for allowing the usage of these otherwise illegal substances. Bev knew that's what most groups only interested in the kind of substances they take would do. But Bev was a genuine believer. She fully knew that the metaphysical world was just all around her, just beyond the grasp of the tangible perception. She just thought that the tools to access them would be out of reach for the duration of her lifetime, that only by centering herself and getting more in tune with nature would she have a chance at perceiving the other world, the one that left an oral afterimage every time that she took in a quick breath, the one that whispered to her in the vibrations of cicadas and the gurgles of mountain springs. "I think I see some new faces," she said with a smile as the last of the gathering crowd took their seats. "Thank you for attending. My name is Beverly, but you can call me Bev. I'll be your guide through this experience." We start pretty informal. We get to know each other, we talk about our troubles, and not just the ones that our kids give us. Quiet laughter buzzed around the crowd. We're just here to share ourselves, to tell about where we came from, tell about where we're going, what we hope to learn from this experience, because the whole point is to learn something. That's always what we need to do to fix something in our lives, isn't it? To learn something. She met their faces in low lighting, each seeming earnest and solemn about being here. A slim man in a cowboy hat introduced himself as Dakota. He said that he had left religion after his youngest daughter had died of appendicitis, and he was trying to find his way back. Bev was happy to put a face to Marcia at last, a stout older woman in ruffled sleeves and a straw cap who was chewing on straw. She listened off and all of her worst boyfriends, listed off, one of whom had a bad habit of signing bounce checks in her name. The mood was joyous but serious, in spite of the heavy themes. Each person in the circle listed off their long-held regrets that they were holding onto, like an older sweater that didn't fit anymore. Laughs were shared, tears were shed. Within just 15 minutes, Beverly felt like this was going to be a really great group. "My name is Tommy Talks, and I need an out-of-body experience to meet Bigfoot." The vibe was annihilated. Beverly didn't know how to respond to that. Neither did any of the other guests, aside from one guy going, "Oh?" The other older woman opening her mouth to say something, then closing it. Luckily, Russ decided to pause. The pause was long enough. "We're not really a squash hunting group per se." "So you're familiar with the Squatchers?" Yeah. You know, there's a cryptozoology club that meets up in Asheville." Oh, they have no experience to offer me. Tommy shut down Russ quicker than a snapping bear trap. They think that they can use guns and traps to hunt a transdimensional creature. Did he say a creature? Said Martha. She sounded more incredulous of the speaker than the notion. I'm gonna make the first big step for Squash to human contact. I don't have any regrets to share. Bev had to make a snap decision. If they asked him to leave right now, he could make a fuss. He could alert the police and make needless trouble for them. But if he stayed, he'd be here for several days, and there was a little doubt that he'd make problems for the church members. Sounds like we're all acquainted then. Let's begin. Russ started up the playlist for the boombox. The sound was clean and clear. The sound of the music helped set the more serious tone that they were looking for before. Beverly dipped her ladle into the soft, shimmering brew. She had done this more times than she could count. They would have to start with a small cup, just to acquaint themselves with the medicine again. Everybody took their sips one by one. Breathe in, said Bev to the church. They took their instructions in stride, diaphragms rising, chests softly expanding in the low orange light. Now out. They exhaled as one. As modern people, we've forgotten how to listen to the world, to the spiritual. We have every convenience imaginable at our fingertips, yet it always seems like we're running out of time. We can press a button on our phones to bring us food. We can have a box wash our clothing instead of running them through washboards for hours. We rest in comfortable cozy beds in noisy cities where lights come out of our call, and we've literally stamped out the stars in the heavens with our light pollution. But somehow, it seems like we never have time to stop, to think, or to contemplate our time on this earth. People used to gather by the fire and learn from the stars. They told of their experiences of the other world in their travels through the woods after dark. The bards and the vagrants would spread these stories from town to town, and people there would share these relationships with their children, pass them down generations. Tommy stood up. Russ stood up to keep him seated, but the man just turned around, bolted into the woods at breakneck speed. There he goes. It hasn't been 45 minutes yet, Tommy, called Russ. Bev wasn't sure what just happened. She had delivered the instructions very clearly. This man said that he was in his late 20s on his form, well beyond the age of individuals that she'd expect this behavior from. Should we go look for him? Said Dakota. Bev shook her head. It's not a good idea. Not before we can see the group's initial reaction to the medicine. But what about that guy? He gonna be okay? If he isn't, he signed a waiver, said Russ flatly. We explained what he was supposed to do. He didn't listen. We'll all go on our scheduled night walk once the time passes, said Bev. It's likely that we'll run into him then. For now, let's just breathe, clear our thoughts, and listen. They heard a gunshot. Jesus, tablets in Christ, said Marcia. So that wasn't just me who heard that? Russ lifted his hands. Don't be alarmed, we live next to hunters. Center yourselves, boomed Beverly. Relax. There was a second gunshot sounding from farther away. Then a third, which was even farther. The group ignored each, staring into the fire pit. Some of them spoke about the sparkles that they saw around their hands. Some talked about an afterimage as their hands moved. When the timing was right, Beverly told the church to rise so that they could start their walks. She brought a bag full of water bottles and walking sticks and led them out into the gloom. First, she led them through a corpse of trees that surrounded them on each side, more like a tunnel. On the way, she pointed out how to tell a fake chanterelle mushroom from a real one by the coloration and its lack of presence of gills. They sampled wild lemongrass shaped like cloves, and bits of Queen Anne's lace, reiterating on how not to make a mistake, not how to mistake it for hemlock. The good one's stem is fuzzy. Hemlock's stem is long and has purple splotches. The path led them to a creek with clean running mountain water, and water deep enough that when you looked at it just right under the moonlight, you could catch the sparkle of trout scales. When the time came for each individual to purge, Bev instructed them to go off in pairs so that they could have the privacy that they needed. They could use the creek to clean off and cool themselves. Bev decided to relax under a rock with running water while Russ distributed water bottles. She pulled out a blunt of blue lotus that she could smoke when she needed to relax, but sighed when the lighter wasn't in the same pocket.
Did you take it, girl?
It was a weird voice that made Bev flinch. She didn't have time to think about the odd choice of phrasing or how the voice sounded before she felt a hard thud on her shoulder that made her scream. "What the hell?" she cried as the force of whatever hit her knocked her blunt into the water. "You okay?" Russ rushed over to her, and she stood. She felt the rush of another rock pass her head in the air and took a long stride away from the waterfall. "No, something hit me on the shoulder." "Oh geez, that's a big old bruise." "It hurts, but I think I'm fine." "Where'd it come from?" Beverly paused. She knew what she ought to say. "Behind me." With that voice, it felt like it was coming from two directions at once. Two voices flanking each side, like two different recordings played in two different timbres. "Maybe we ought to just cancel?" "Nah, I'll power through it. I shouldn't have been that close to the waterfall after dark anyway." Dakota and Marcia came rushing towards them. "What happened?" asked Dakota. "We thought Bev was being attacked." "I don't know what happened. Something threw a rock at me and..." Marcia's eyebrows widened. "And?" "It sounded like somebody was taunting me in a really weird voice." "You said that you got hit by a rock?" Bev rubbed her shoulder defensively. "Yeah, or something was standing at the top of the falls and making them fall." Dakota's eyes grew big. "You know, they say that throwing rocks is Sasquatch behavior." Bev blinked. "Excuse me?" "Oh, geez." Marcia chewed that side of her lip. "You saying that it was a Bigfoot, Dakota?" He tilted his hat. "They protect their territory by throwing rocks or hitting wood against a tree." Bev let out a high-pitched laugh, incredulous. "It wasn't a Bigfoot, you guys." Marcia shrugged. "You ever met a Bigfoot?" Bev showed the whites of her teeth when she smiled, nodding. "I'll let you know what I do. This thing talked like a guy." "Thing?" asked Dakota. "I mean, it probably was a guy." Marcia gawked. "Probably?" "I mean, he didn't sound right." She bit her lip. "I really think that it might be that Tommy guy." "You think that he's trying to start something?" said Russ. "I don't know," Bev said. "But he's been a little bit funny from the start." The rest of the night went without incident. Spirits in the church remained high. Though their bodies were exhausted by the experience, they spent the rest of the night discussing their finds on the trail, their fates, their place in the world, and Bev did her best to avoid any sort of discussions on whether or not the spirit world held room for an entity like Sasquatch. But she didn't sleep particularly well. There was something about that voice that felt wrong. She could only describe it as a terrible sense of unbelonging. It wasn't until the morning when things went off the rails again. Russ and Bev woke to a low buzz of excited chatter around their tents. They unzipped to see the crowd hovering around something. Or rather, someone. Tommy was back. "What is he doing?" whispered Russ. "Excuse me, but what's going on?" "I was running an experiment," said Tommy, smirking. He pulled from the bottom of the sack on the floor, letting its contents slip out. Something dark and longer than a tall human being was emptied out. At first, Bev thought that it was some kind of eel because it was moving, but it was hairy and the end of the stump was bloody. Bev's voice was quaking. "What is this?" Tommy gave her a wide, cheesy smile with his tongue partially poking out. The first ever recorded evidence of a Sasquatch appendage. It reminded her more of a lizard's tail than anything belonging to a great ape, with the way that it squirmed. I'm no expert in monsters, said Russell, staring at the thing squirting a new clot of blood as a bit of muscle unclumped. But that doesn't look like any part of a big ape that I've ever seen. That's because a real one's never been seen before, said Tommy, like the notion was simple. Not like I've seen it. What are you talking about, hissed Bev. I mean that people just think that they're monkeys because they're big and hairy. They're from another dimension. They're not made out of matter. That's why they can shrink and grow, slip between worlds. It's why when somebody happens to think that they see them, they just got fuzzy blueprints, the idea of them. They're gone before they know it because most of them weren't even here. Oh, and they can talk too. They know our language, or at least how to imitate it. Not very well, though. You look very pleased with yourself. Of course I am. I just made history. Let me ask you a different kind of question, said Bev, trying not to let the heat swim to her face. You're among a group of people who know that the spiritual world is real, for lack of a better word. Would you agree that this is a spirit? Would you call a spirit? I call a transcendental being. Tommy's grin grew toothier. We can agree that a spirit is a word for something that we don't understand before we do. Let me ask you this, Tommy. Why the fuck did you shoot it? The smile on Tommy's face was wiped away. Look, I know a lot of you chicks are vegans and shit, but this isn't an animal, and it sure as hell isn't a person either. It's something else, and it's not even dead. Just look at it move. I think you're missing the point, hon, said Marcia, speaking up. Can you think of any story told in human history where a human goes into the forest, picks a fight with a spirit, and walks out of it better off? Yeah, Beowulf. Beowulf dies, shrieked Bev. Yeah, but not for a long time. I thought this group of people of all people would understand not needing somebody else's permission to try something awesome. You can't poach from our property, Bev hissed. We're throwing that thing back into the woods. Get him out of here, Russ. Russ held up his hand. Now, wait a minute, Bev. Russ? If this thing were to go viral, do you think that we can make a lot of money off of it? Oh yeah, though people want to see a sample get tested or else they'll say it's AI, Tommy said. What the fuck, Russ? He lowered his voice. Lawsuits are expensive, Bev. If we want to defend our rights, we're going to have to put up the heat in court. This might be the answer that we needed. Like hell it is. If there's one rule about powers that we don't understand, it's that it's not smart to mess with them. But what if it's just a weird kind of animal? Said Dakota. If they're already here and in our woods, they're probably an important part of it. We should try to understand them. I think so too. Great then, it's decided. I think y'all don't even need the medicine to be tripping balls. That thing is evil if I ever saw it, Marcia said. Tommy shook his head. Just because you don't understand something doesn't mean that it's evil. Boy, you can pretend that you're as wise as you want, but I wouldn't let that twisted thing be 10,000 feet away from the inside of my house, said Marcia, adjusting her cowgirl hat before she spit her gum on the ground. I've seen movies before, sugar. Well, luckily the real world isn't a movie. I'm doing this for science. And not for the Vine? Vine doesn't even exist anymore. It's an expression, asshole. Okay, Grandma. We can start in our house for now. Russ, what the hell are you saying? I'm saying that we're probably the only place with a freezer for miles, growled Russ. It looks like the damage is already done. If it decomposes, we won't know what the hell it ever was, or be able to give it back. We're not keeping that in my mother's house. I'm just taking it to the cooler inside the house. I'll pack it in ice and I'll let Mr. Tommy take it to do whatever he needs to do. Russ stooped over the moving tail, multiple people recording how it moved on their phones, and reached for the sack before stopping and making eye contact with Tommy. If that's all right, I mean. Sure, brother. Let me help you there. Tommy leaned to pick up the sack while Russ wrangled a wiggling dark appendage, still spewing gore and marrow from one end, getting just a little bit of blood on the shirt. Bev didn't know how to stop it, most especially because she expected Russ to know better. She liked passive income as much as the next person, but she didn't think that they were that strapped for money, not to mention that this didn't feel in the spirit of the church by any means, at least not to her. But she also knew that both she and Russ had bonded over dedication to learning the truth about the universe, even if somebody told them no, even if their own instincts told them no. Bev constantly juggled comfort and seeking out growth. Perhaps that's why she decided that she wasn't taking drastic measures to keep her husband from bringing that thing into their house, even if, for a moment, this was a line too far for her. But it was not too far for him, and he was going to take his journey with or without her approval. The other undeniable fact was that they were dragging the scent of a wounded, unknown thing into their household. Bev and Martha and Dakota knew this was not an intelligent thing to do. "It'll be fine," Russ said, picking up on Bev and the other churchgoers' discomfort. "You know it won't," said Bev, but off she walked with the wiggling sack, stained red at the base. It was understood by the church members now that there wouldn't be a second day of brew. "You and I both know that it's not smart to stay here tonight. I'd stay away until at least the first rain," Martha said. "Where are the dogs and the horses going to go?" Bev said. "Bring them too if you want. No amount of money is worth dying for." "I'll stay just for one night." "You're smarter than that, Bev. You used to think that Russ was too. Now I wouldn't even trust him with a checkbook. He wants to take care of the church. If he really wanted to take care of the church, he'd have chucked that thing back into the woods, and you know it. He thinks that we might be able to help. If we keep the tail on ice, put things right, if there is a way to." "Yep, wouldn't let him near the checkbook." She looked Bev in the eyes. "You call me when you need help, okay? Me and Dakota will be on over quicker than butter melting in the skillet. You'll have jobs. This is our mess now." "This is Tommy's mess, is what you mean. I recognize this type now." She turned around and glared in his direction, where he sat on the tailgate of his truck. She spit out gum again. This was the first time Bev realized that it was the kind that you chew to get off nicotine. "He gets by with having other people take on his mistakes. You got your man hook, line, and sinker. He got your man hook, line, and sinker." "I'm starting to feel the same way. Trust me, honey, if he's packing a shotgun, that boy's got his own cooler, and there's plenty of gas stations to get ice. He knows your husband speaks in dollar signs, and that's how he got to him." It was probably true, but even so, she didn't like the idea of having thoughts this angry about her husband. Russ wasn't perfect, but he was a hell of a lot better than the first husband. And they still loved each other. That was their impetus to start the church in the first place. It was a thing that they did together. "Call me tonight at least," is all Marcia said before she packed her last bag into the back of her truck. "All right. Love you, hun. We all do." "Love y'all too." She tipped her hat before she stepped into her truck, started the engine, and disappeared down the driveway. One by one, the rest of the procession followed, until it was just her and Tommy. They sat together without talking. Russ appeared from inside of the house with a large cooler. "You're a good man, Russ. We'll split this 50-50, and all the world will be better for knowing a whole lot more about what lurks in the shadows of their backyards. You can keep the cooler. I don't think that smell is ever coming out of it. They don't call it skunk ape in Florida for nothing, brother." He loaded the cooler into the back of his truck and hopped off the tailgate, closing it. "You take care of yourself now, and her too. She needs it." "I do most of the caretaking. I'm the church leader," Bev said. "Well..." He shrugged and smirked. "I'll leave you to it then." He hopped into his truck and let his arm hang out the window, turning on the radio really loud before zooming off. After that man left, the woods felt different to Bev. The wind moved slightly wrong, making the grass whip around and irritate her legs. The shadows beneath and between the trees looked larger, looked like it cut through the trees in slivers rather than a soft, full diffusion of golden light. It was like the forest itself was angry at her, Bev decided. It was angry at her and it wasn't her fault. She knew something was coming. "You've been standing out here staring for 15 minutes, said Russ. "I can't believe you didn't throw him off the property." He shrugged. "I didn't really want to fight. Anything that I might have done would have just gotten the police involved." "Then you brought it inside. What's the point of getting in a fight with somebody that we can get rid of as fast as possible and never see again?" "Because the problem doesn't end with him. Animals can smell blood for miles." "For all we know that there was a prop, Bev. He's a con artist. You saw how easy it was to make everybody in the church to want to believe. I could smell the blood, Russ, and so can animals." He didn't have anything to say to that. "Do you know what I heard in the woods last night after the rock hit me?" "No." "Did you take it?" The wind blew a little harder. "So that confirms it. We're just being fucked with. And it's not over, mark my words." Bev passed him, not wanting to talk anymore. No matter what, it was going to be a bad night. She locked up the horses in their barns and the dogs in their kennels. It wouldn't be safe for them tonight. Russ agreed to watch the door upstairs, covering both entrances at the house. Bev and Russ slept in the basement of their large log cabin. The entire house was built into a hillside anyway. 2 double doors made out of glass faced their cement porch. Every morning Bev would awaken to the vibrant sea of green that was their giant lawn. Bev used to think that she was lucky to live with a view so beautiful and vibrant, but as the sun set and the sky grew darker, she would have to reconcile the fact that even if something were coming, she probably wouldn't be able to see it, even if she were looking right at it. To take her mind off of her troubles, she sat and began to work on another one of her books, a piece on grounding yourself in mindfulness. Her desk faced the double doors. The sea of green she cherished every morning became a void as the darkness swallowed it, obscuring everything but the concrete patio and the clumps of grass licked by the lamplights outside. If there were such a thing as Sasquatch, she wondered what a real one would look like. She was fully aware of what the story would say about it, that it stood higher than 8 feet, and that he had a conical head, the face of a great ape. None of the stories ever mentioned a tail. All of a sudden, she heard the dogs howling. The yelps were frenzied and aggressive. The horses were making noises too in the barn. She looked out the window. It was hard to see anything really, just a dark field of curated grass overshadowed by tall pine trees that blotted out the last reminder of daylight. Then Bev felt something, the intense feeling that you get when you catch somebody staring at you out the corner of your eye. It felt like a person, not like an animal. She opened the glass door just a crack, and she shouted, "Leave us alone, please." Predictably, there was no answer. If Tommy's true intentions was to scare the shit out of Bev and the religious group, he had already succeeded. "This is private property. If we see you here at night, we will call the police." Bev was half bluffing herself. She knew the police were useless. She also knew that bringing them here would turn into an excuse for them to cause trouble for the church. Locals were already mistrusting of them. But a punk kid who wasn't from around here might not know that. When she closed the door, she saw something on the other side of the glass, where her face was just before. At first, she thought that it was just her own reflection. But there were folds and creases that she didn't have. The eyes were in the wrong location relative to her nose, and the mouth was wider than was appropriate for a human face.
"Alone. Please."
She jumped back and screamed. The face was gone. Had she really heard those words? Or had she imagined it? They sounded somewhat like her own. She also knew that schizophrenia ran in her family. It was always a risk that she would hear things, doing what she did. But whatever was there, or what she had thought was there, was gone, replaced with her own reflection in the mirror. After a few deep breaths and a few steps back, she decided that she had seen was not paranormal at all. This meant that there was probably her time to retire as a head of the church. A spiritual guide had to be in control of her body and their perceptions at all times if they had intended to lead others to heal. If she had an incurable sickness, this wasn't something that she'd be able to do. She felt that feeling again, the intense feeling of being stared at. It wasn't coming from the smaller windows she was facing now. She looked into them but couldn't see anything. The horses were quiet. She thought that it wasn't much of anything until she heard a loud, odd shuffling sound. It was a hollow sort of snort, loud, and it almost egregious, like it wanted to be heard. This was a little bit like the kind of sniff that she had heard a territorial buck make before. But this was different. Wrong. This definitely wasn't a buck, or if it was, it would be like 3 different bucks snorting at once, coming from slightly different locations around the outside of her home. And it sounded like it was closer to the outside of that window that she would have liked. She backed away from the side window, then crossed her basement, making her way to the double doors again. She wanted to double-check that she had locked both sides of the door. Her reflection in the window changed again. This time it wasn't the face of the person looking back at her. It was something that looked a little like a dog and a little like a cat, but not quite really either of them, and not quite right. It also stood as tall as a horse. Its yellow eyes glowed like bicycle reflectors in the night.
Give me back my tail.
Schizophrenia was not a logical conclusion for looking into a creature out of your waking dreams. If it was a lucid manifestation, it was sophisticated one. Bev had never felt this scared in her life, but she was also curious.
Give me back my tail.
It repeated, a rumble, a growl, a whinny, and a whine all at once. She had heard once that speaking to a spirit was an invitation, but it had already seen her, and she had not seen it, and she had seen it. There was already a line of connection. "Why do you think that we have it?" she said. She regretted speaking to it immediately. The beast's face grew, enlarging like the unfurling petals of a dark blossom. What was once the size of a bobcat looked now to be the size of a lion.
Blood does not lie,
said the thing, telling her what she already knew. Its eyes flashed like saucers.
You will give me back my tail.
We do not have your tail. A man in a truck took it. She heard a giant thud as the beast propped its paws on the glass. Each paw was bigger than her head, a meaty core of bone and muscle at its center, while the ends of them turned thin and wiry, almost like the curling anatomy of an insect.
The layer between where you are standing and where I am standing,
said the creature as a glass crunched,
is weak.
That man asked my husband for a container for your tail. My husband gave him one so that he would leave us alone. Your tail isn't here. Then in a single blink, the creature was gone. The dogs had stopped barking. The horses stopped their whinnies too. Was the thing rewarding her for telling the truth? Or did it merely believe her and didn't want to waste whatever precious time it had left in tracking down Tommy? She crouched down to study the glass one more time, just to make sure that she wasn't hallucinating. But then there was a pale white radiance, as bright as lightning, and just as quick. She screamed again, because in the light she saw the thing holding Russ. He was bleeding from an armless stump. The thing tore sinews with its conical mouth, all flexible flesh and serrated teeth. Just as she saw him, he was gone. The local police filed a missing persons report after Bev approached them the next morning. According to her own account, her husband got into a conflict with a wild animal, was injured and chased it into the woods, then did not return. A small amount of blood belonging to Russ was discovered on the front porch of their home, but it was only discovered after several days of heavy rain. When interviewed, members of the church say that Bev told them a different story, the story about the creature which stalked their home. Russ isn't dead. It's obvious that he took care of Tommy, said another member of the church who did not want to state his name. He'd always make problems go away with a lawsuit. Obviously, that didn't work this time. He was protective of the church, protective of anything that might embarrass Bev or paint her practices in a negative light. The paranormal investigation channel, Tommy Talks, has not been updated since. An upload of Bigfoot's tale has never been taken any social media platforms by storm, nor have there been any further claims that Sasquatch has a tale by any large cryptozoology enthusiasts. Dakota relayed that she told him and Marcia the story about the creature. It was too specific for her to just make it up. I at least believe that she thinks that this is what she saw. It lines up with what we saw that day too. Most of the phone recordings of the tale had glare or poor quality. Some of them were recordings of their own faces rather than the tale in the sack itself. The video with the best quality showed movement in the sack and drops of what looked like gore, but the scale and the shape of the tail weren't clear. I'm sure that she saw something, but hell, who doesn't in our group, said Sarah, a member of Beverly's Henford church. It doesn't matter what she saw or didn't because Russ is still missing. Another church member named Marcia said, "You should just do your damn jobs. Lord knows that you never do." Wait a moment. The monster in the story reminds me of another that I've heard. I can't remember, but it was about a hunter and his dogs. I hate the idea of somebody threatening in the woods, following you home and breaking in. Which is why I think if something really did happen, it was probably a home invasion from one of the church members. So, who was the guy who knew in the story, Nils? Who you knew in the story, Nils? It was Dakota, except his real name isn't Dakota. Of course. Either way, it's getting chilly. I don't think that I want to mess around in the dark for too much longer tonight. Ditto, if hunters are still walking around out here. Looks like your story had an impact on them, Nils. Well, naturally. After all, we evolved to fear all of our predators out here looking in the dark. That's how our ancestors survived living in caves without sleeping through something nasty. Like I said, so long as it's not big feet, I won't call it stupid. That's high praise coming from you. Satisfied? Maybe a little. Kill the fire. So, that was the second story, and again, I apologize for any mistakes that I might have made. As you can see, I rely heavily on being able to backtrack on the text and then rereading it. Unfortunately, because this is made in Unity, it doesn't have that ability yet. Hopefully they might add it in the future, but yeah. Anyways, so yeah. Anywho, I kind of like the story. And again, I do like the format of how these are presented, where it's more or less like a Reddit story of like the like I think the forum or the subreddit is called Let's Not Meet Again or something like that, where it's usually like people retelling kind of creepy tales or like tales on when they were like stalked or things like that. I know there's one specifically for like horror like this. And again, each individual character is going to tell their own type of horror story because these are horror stories. The first one was more of like you're being stalked by something that may or may not be supernatural. This one is supernatural, but it's about a creature that appears to be interdimensional. I believe the frog girl, her story is going to be more grounded in reality because she doesn't like cryptids and things like that. The pink dog girls is more not a love, but like more it will be more relationship focused, I believe. I don't know what the cat and the hyena stories are gonna be like though. So yeah. But yeah. Like I said, really like this type of not narration, this type of the way that they're presented. Okay, so I'm gonna keep doing it. What else? Did you like the story? Despite my many mistakes? I will admit, it did unsettle me a little because my room is very dark right now. The whole having somebody be outside your window or like even your porch and then looking in at you, and the only thing keeping them out is the door, which they could very easily have destroyed and, gone after you. And I mean, I believe that the monster didn't attack her and it went after the husband because the husband facilitated the Tommy guy getting away with the tail. If the husband had said like, no, get off of my property, just, you can take the tail but leave, then the thing probably would not have attacked him, or at the very least, it probably would not have left with him. I'm assuming that the husband probably is like, oh, what is that outside? I'm gonna go scare it, and then he confronted it, and the thing is like, I'm gonna eat you. I'm gonna take you. And then when it found out that he facilitated the Tommy Talks stealing his tail, then it's like, okay, I'm gonna like really take you now for cereal. So like, yeah. But yeah, I like the story. I wonder what the other guys, or what their stories are gonna be like. I mean, I know more or less a vague idea of what they're gonna be like based on what they have already said and what they sort of already favor. But like, I'm still curious about like the cat and the hyena, and like, yeah, like, because they haven't really mentioned what their stories are like or what their preferences. Yeah. Anywho, so yeah. Anyway, so thank you all for watching / listening. If you would like to play 18 Mile Hike yourself, you can do so by going down into the link in the description, which should have a direct link for the itch.io page where you can download the game. And if you would like to support the project and the people making it, you can subscribe to their Subscribestar because they don't use Patreon, because Subscribestar has a much it has a more lax, I guess you could say, rules on the type of content that you can upload. So like, if you've had trouble with Patreon, then Subscribestar is a perfectly good alternative that shouldn't give you that much trouble. But yeah. Also, if you would like to support the channel and watch these videos earlier as they're being scheduled, you can do so by going down and becoming a channel member. If you don't see that below the video itself, then there is a link down in the description. And if you would like to support through other means like Ko-fi, then, go for it. I do have a throne in case you feel so inclined and generous. I do have stuff there that I want. But yeah. Anywho, so I guess that's it for now, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.